You might wonder what a text that's over 2,500 years old could possibly teach us about social media, or our relationships, or even just day-to-day communication. Well, as it turns out, a whole lot. So today, let's dive into this incredible chapter of ancient wisdom and see just how practical its insights are for the world we're living in right now.
All right, let's just jump right in with a question that, well, it cuts right to the heart of it. Think about it for a second. When you're in a conversation, or a meeting, or even just scrolling through comments online, what's your default setting? Are you actually trying to absorb what's being said, or are you just waiting for your turn to talk, already forming your comeback? This one question right here is the key that unlocks everything else we're about to explore.
In that question, it leads us perfectly into our first big idea, the opinion and the ear. Because before we even say a single word, there's a choice that happens inside our own minds. It's a fundamental decision about how we're going to engage with the world and all the information it's throwing at us.
So the text basically lays out two very different paths. On one side, you've got the person who just loves the sound of their own voice, the one who gets a rush from just broadcasting their hot takes. For them, it's not about understanding, it's just about being heard. But on the other side, you have someone whose ears are actively seeking knowledge. They're not just passively hearing things, they are actively hunting for insight. It's really the difference between performance and genuine curiosity.
And the consequence of choosing the first path is laid out pretty bluntly. Answering before you've actually listened isn't just a minor slip-up or a bad habit. No, it's defined here as folly and shame. I mean, think about it. In our world of instant reactions, tweet storms, and rapid-fire comments, does this not sound like it was written yesterday?
Okay, so that's what's going on inside our heads. But what happens when that internal choice spills out into the real world? Well, it comes out in our words. And those words have the power to either build things up or break them down completely.
The first and most obvious result? Conflict. Yeah, not surprising, right? When our whole goal is just to air our own opinions without taking a moment to understand, the natural outcome is strife. It's arguments and division. Our words stop being bridges and instead become weapons.
And it doesn't just stop at a few arguments. Oh no, it escalates. And it escalates fast. This isn't just about picking fights anymore. This kind of speech becomes a trap that we set for ourselves. The very words we use to puff ourselves up become the cause of our own downfall, trapping us in these endless cycles of conflict and misunderstanding.
But all these warnings about getting into fights and basically sabotaging yourself, that's only half the story. The text then flips the coin to show us the true, staggering power our words really have. And here it is. This is probably one of the most famous lines from this chapter, and for good reason. It's showing us the ultimate stakes. Our words can literally build someone up, give them encouragement that feels like life itself, or they can tear someone down, crushing their spirit. It is a staggering responsibility, literally placing the power of life and death in what we choose to say.
Okay, so with that kind of power in mind, let's zoom in on one specific, really damaging way we use our words, gossip. It gets special attention here because of just how sneaky and destructive it is.
I absolutely love this imagery. Gossip is presented as this delicious, tempting little snack. It's so easy to swallow, and it feels kind of good in the moment. But the problem isn't the taste, it's where it goes. It doesn't just pass through. It goes down to the inmost parts. It gets down deep inside and starts to rot things from the inside out, for both the person speaking it and the one listening to it.
So you see this chain reaction, right? Internal choice, external words, deep consequences. And all of this naturally leads to a much bigger question about our lives. In a world that can feel so chaotic and uncertain, where do we actually find our safety? Where do we run when things get tough?
And again, we see two different paths. One person finds their security in their wealth, right? Their money is their fortified city. But here's the key, and you can't miss this. Notice that tiny but all-important word, imagine. This security is presented as an illusion, a wall that only exists in their head. The other path leads to a different kind of refuge, a fortified tower that's built not on imagination, but on character and faith, a place of genuine safety.
And this is where it all comes together. We're coming full circle now, right back to the direct, unavoidable results of our words and how they literally create the reality we end up living in.
The last big metaphor here is all about farming. It's so simple, but so profound. One verse says, "From the fruit of their mouth, a person's stomach is filled." In other words, you are going to eat what you plant with your lips. If you plant life-giving words, you're going to have a satisfying harvest. If you plant destructive words, well, you're going to reap a harvest of ruin. Simple as that.
And where do we see this harvest most clearly? In our relationships, of course. A life filled with a bunch of shallow, unreliable connections, it says leads to ruin. But the alternative, the kind of friendship that's grown with wisdom and care, is a bond of loyalty so deep it can be even stronger than family.
And just to really drive the point home, there's one last, pretty sobering reminder in here. When our words go wrong, especially with the people closest to us, the damage can be absolutely massive. A relationship that's been broken by hurtful words becomes like a fortress, and the arguments become like barred gates that lock us out, sometimes for good.
So what's the takeaway from all this? After digging into this ancient guide, it really all boils down to this one simple, powerful question for you, for me, for all of us. If our words really are seeds and our lives are the field they grow in, then the question isn't if we're planting something today, but what we're planting. Are we sowing life and understanding and strong relationships? Or are we sowing strife and division and isolation? The harvest, as this text makes crystal clear, is entirely up to us.